All right, thanks, Tony. We're going to turn now to the Good Morning America exclusive on John Kerry and his Vietnam War medals. The question really has dogged him for years. Did he throw them all away during a 1970s anti-war protest? Our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, is here with a report. Brian?
Good morning, Charlie. John Kerry's record as a much-decorated war hero in Vietnam stands uncontested, despite suggestions to the contrary from some Republicans. But it is what he did and said when he returned home to lead the Vietnam veterans against the war that remains very much contested, based in part on what we found to be his own shifting and contradictory statements. Most telling whether Kerry was one of the Vietnam vets who threw away their medals in protest.
In a real sense, this administration forced us to return our medals.
It was an emotional scene played out 33 years ago this weekend in front of the Capitol. And news reports at the time said Kerry did throw away his medals, something Kerry now maintains is a myth.
I'm proud of my medals, always was proud of them.
In an interview with ABC News, Kerry told Peter Jennings last December that he only threw away his ribbons and the medals of 2 other vets, none of the 11 medals he was awarded.
And so this myth was created. I threw away my ribbons.
In fact, Kerry's campaign website calls it a right-wing fiction that he threw away his medals during the protest. The site says Kerry's right-wing opponents have been smearing him ever since. But Kerry told a much different story at the time on a tape obtained by ABC News of a 1971 television interview on a Washington, D.C. news program called Viewpoints.
You're looking at a picture of a veteran who is throwing his medal away.
Kerry said the veterans, including him, were renouncing, throwing away the symbols the country had given them.
And that was the medals themselves. And so they decided to give them back to their country.
How many did you get back, John?
I gave back, I can't remember, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Well, you were awarded the Bronze Star, a Silver Star, and 3 Purple Hearts.
Well, and above that, I gave back my others.
6, 7, 8, 9 medals, he said, that he threw away. No mention of giving back just ribbons or the medals of others, as he would later say. Just last Friday, Kerry told the Los Angeles Times that he never, ever implied that he had thrown away his medals, something that clearly seems to be contradicted, Charlie, by this old tape that we obtained.
All right, thanks, Brian Ross. Now joining us from West Virginia is himself, Senator John Kerry. He's in the town of Glen Easton, West Virginia today. Senator, good to have you with us.
Charlie, I'm glad to be with you. I really am.
1984, Senator, to the present. You have said a number of times, as Brian just pointed out, as recently as last Friday with the Los Angeles Times, you've said a number of times that you did not throw away the Vietnam medals themselves. But now this interview from 1971 shows up in which you say that was the medals themselves that were thrown away.
No, I don't.
Can you explain the discrepancy?
Charlie, absolutely. That is absolutely incorrect. Charlie, I stood up in front of the nation. There were dozens of cameras there, television cameras. There were, I don't know, 20, 30 still photographers, thousands of people. And I stood up in front of the country, reached into my shirt, visibly for the nation to see, and took the ribbons off my chest, said a few words, and threw them over the fence. The file footage, the reporter there from the Boston Globe, everybody got it correctly. And I never asserted otherwise. What I said was, and back then, you know, ribbons, medals were absolutely interchangeable. Senator Symington, in asking me questions in the committee hearing, looked at the ribbons and said, what are those medals? The U.S. Navy pamphlet calls them medals. We all referred to them as the symbols. They were representing medals, ribbons. Countless veterans threw the ribbons back, Charlie. Everybody did. Veterans threw back dog tags. They threw back photographs. They threw back their DD-214s. There are photographs of a pile of all of those things collected on the steps of the Capitol. So the fact is that I've been accurate precisely about what took place. And I am the one who later made clear exactly what happened. I mean, it's just, this is a controversy that the Republicans are pushing. The Republicans have spent $60 million in the last few weeks trying to attack me. And this comes from a president and a Republican Party that can't even answer whether or not he showed up for duty in the National Guard. I'm not going to stand for it.
Well, Senator, I was there 33 years ago. I saw you throw medals over the fence, and we didn't find out till later that those were someone else's medals.
Charlie, you're wrong. That is not what happened. I threw my ribbons across, and all you have to do is go back and find the file footage.
And someone else's medals, correct?
After, excuse me, yeah. Charlie. After the ceremony was over, I had a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart given to me, one Purple Heart by a veteran in the VA in New York, and the Bronze Star by an older veteran of World War II in Massachusetts. And I threw them over because they asked me to.
All right, but Senator, let me come back to the thing you just said, which is that the military makes no distinction. That the military makes no distinction.
Controversy.
That the military makes no distinction between ribbons and medals. But you're the one who made the distinction in 1984.
No, we made no distinction back then, Charlie. We made no distinction.
But in 1984, Senator, I don't want to argue with it. I just want to ask the question. In 1984, when you were running for the Senate, that was the first time that you called someone in from labor because they were upset that you had thrown ribbons away.
No, someone from labor.
You called them in and you made the distinction and said, I didn't throw my medals away, I just threw the ribbons away. You made the distinction.
I was asked specifically in greater detail about what took place, and I answered the question truthfully, which was exactly consistent with what happened in 1971. I mean, Charlie, go back and get the file footage. There were millions of people watching on television. I stood up in front of the nation and I took my ribbons off my chest, just as other veterans did. This is a phony controversy. This is being pushed yesterday by Karen Hughes at the White House on Fox. It shows up at several different stations at the same time. The Republicans are running $10 million this week to attack my credentials on defense. This comes from a president who can't even show or prove that he showed up for duty in the National Guard.
Senator,
and I'm not going to stand for it. I'm not going to stand for it.
I understand your feeling that politics is behind this, but I ask you, is it not fair to draw the inference that when trying to appeal to the anti-war people in 1971, you said, as in that interview, it was the medals, and then when the people who supported the war were giving you political problems, you then said, no, I didn't throw the medals away 13 years later.
Charlie, that's the most, with all due respect, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Because I stood up in front of the country, in front of cameras. Tom Oliphant of the Boston Globe got it correct. He wrote about the medals, but he knew they were my ribbons. Everybody understood what we were doing. I even said in that interview that we threw away the symbols of what our country gave us for what we had gone through. And if I was, back then, incidentally, trying to appeal to somebody, I stood up against Richard Nixon, stood up against the war, took a position. It wasn't popular. It was polarizing. I didn't have to do it. If I was trying to hide something, I would have never stood there in front of everybody and thrown them over the fence. I threw my ribbons over. I threw the medals of two veterans who asked me to throw them over after the ceremony, completely separate. And I'm the one, if I had something to hide, I'm the one who made it known exactly what happened. To me, it's one and the same, and I'm proud of it.
Let me ask you about two other things that you have said subsequent to that. 1985, you said to the Washington Post, it is such a personal thing, I did not want to throw my medals away. Then 1996, you said to the Boston Globe, I didn't bring my own medals to throw because I didn't have time to go home and get them. Which one was it? Did you want to throw the medals away or not?
I've expressed that there was great sort of sense of wrenching about the whole thing. Many of us, we had a long argument the night before, Charlie, it's a matter of record, as to how we were going to do it. And a vote was taken. I was not in favor of throwing them over the fence. I thought we ought to lay them on a table and put them in front of people in a way that, wouldn't be as challenging to many Americans. Other veterans felt otherwise. They took a vote. The vote was made. They voted to throw. I threw my ribbons. I didn't have my medals. It's very simple. And what the Republicans are trying to do is make this into an issue because they have no record to run on. They can't go out and talk about jobs or health care or the environment, so they're going to attack 35 years ago. Last week, in an unprecedented attack, they sent congressmen to the floor of the Senate, of the House, to attack me on the anniversary of my speech. George Bush has yet to explain to America whether or not, and tell the truth about whether he showed up for duty. I'm not going to get attacked on something that I did that is a matter of record, that the press saw, that I did in front of the entire nation, and everyone then understood. There was no distinction. We threw away the symbols of the war. I'm proud I stood up and fought against it, proud I took on Richard Nixon, and I think to this day there's no distinction between the two.
All right, Senator, I appreciate your being with us this morning. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you. All right, all the best. Diane?